Why are you in the bathroom? Were you trying to peek at me? You're the worst. I had been enjoying the company trip and banquet, but I never expected to get scolded after helping the president's daughter. I tried to explain calmly, but the next day, I was summoned by her. Judging by her demeanor, she was probably really angry. I straightened up and waited for her to speak. But then, for some reason, she moved closer to me and, "So, what did you think of my body?" "What?" "My name is Daniel, just an ordinary guy in my early 20s working as a regular office worker. However, my appearance is anything but ordinary, thanks to a large scar running from my left temple to the corner of my eyebrow. I got this scar in a car accident when I was a kid, but anyone who sees it might think I'm someone from the underworld. Because of that, I've gone through a lot of experiences most people wouldn't have to. During my school days, classmates avoided me openly, I got harassed by troublemakers, and even as an adult, job hunting was incredibly difficult. The scar made me look bad at first glance, and during interviews, most interviewers would sigh and say, "Well, you see." But it's understandable. Salespeople deal with all kinds of people. If someone like me, with a scarred face, showed up, the first impression would take a massive hit. No, it would completely ruin it. Deals that another salesperson might have easily secured could fall through because of me, costing the company. Plus, with this scar where it is, my face just doesn't look friendly. If rumors started circulating that there's a dangerous guy in that company, it could damage the company's image. I guess I could have chosen a different career path. But I've always thought that sales, where you win contracts with your words and passion, was a cool job. It might sound odd to admire sales, but it was probably because of a comic book I read when I was a kid. Because of that, I went through dozens of interviews but couldn't get a single job offer. I started to think that I might not be able to make it as a working adult anymore. I was so discouraged that it felt overwhelming. To be clear, none of the rejection letters I received mentioned anything about my scar as the reason. But it was the way people stared at me and the reactions from interviewers that made me feel that way. Despite all that, I somehow managed to land a job as a regular office worker. When I received the job offer, I couldn't believe it. I had to check it over and over again. "Hey, Mom. I think I got a job offer." "Really? That's wonderful. We should celebrate with some sushi tonight." "Well, but I might have read it wrong." "Huh? Did you read it wrong?" "I'm not sure. Can you double check with me?" "Geez, you're hopeless. Let me see." I even had my family confirm the offer because I just couldn't believe it wasn't a mistake. When I finally accepted that it was real, my hand shook as I held the paper, and my confusion and doubt turned into joy. When my joy hit its peak, I couldn't help but pump my fist. Looking back now, it's a little embarrassing, but it was such a happy moment. I felt so grateful to the company that hired me and made a personal vow to work harder than anyone else. However, even though I managed to get the job, the scar was still a disadvantage. I had finally landed my dream sales job, and though I was officially called a salesperson, I wasn't actually given any sales work. Instead, I was stuck behind the scenes. My job was to assist the senior salespeople and my peers by gathering information on potential clients, organizing it, and analyzing it. At first, I had hoped I'd still be able to do sales despite my scar, but the tasks my boss assigned me were all menial. It didn't take long for me to realize that I wasn't going to be allowed to do any real sales work because of my scar. At first, I was frustrated, thinking, this isn't what we agreed on, and I even considered quitting. But knowing how hard it was for me to find this job, I knew it wouldn't be easy to get hired again. So I changed my focus, deciding to work as hard as I could as a sales assistant for the company I had promised to give my all for. 2 years have passed since then, and now even my boss trusts me, saying, if you leave it to him, it'll get done. I'm still not allowed to handle sales or go out to meet clients, just quietly doing office work, but I've started to find satisfaction in it. And I'm growing attached to this job. Nowadays, I enjoy casual conversations with my coworkers in the same department, but when I was first assigned, no one talked to me. The sales department is always bustling with people coming and going. In the midst of it all, I quietly sat at my desk, diligently working away. That doesn't mean I didn't interact with anyone at all, though. I would hand over the documents I prepared to the salespeople, and I did communicate with others in the department when it was work-related. At first, I can imagine that it must have been intimidating to approach someone with a huge scar like mine. The kind you'd expect from someone in the underworld. Even I'd be scared if someone with a face like mine tried to talk to me. Understanding this about myself, I knew I had to break through the misconceptions, so I made an effort to communicate with my coworkers. I made sure to be kind, so I wouldn't scare anyone with my scar, and I always tried to smile and be cheerful. Maybe because of that, now I'm able to enjoy conversations with people just like anyone else. Sometimes, I still get nervous about the looks people give me, and I find myself eavesdropping to see what they're saying. But there's no sign that anyone's afraid, and that reassures me. In fact, I've even heard that the contrast between my scarred appearance and my kind, serious personality has made me quite popular with the women in the office. Apparently, the rumors about me have spread beyond the sales department to other departments as well. And according to those rumors, I somehow even have a girlfriend, which couldn't be further from the truth. I've never had a girlfriend in my life. It's an embarrassing rumor, to say the least. But since no one has ever mentioned it directly, I've never corrected it, and I doubt I will. Though part of me feels a little frustrated that I can't clear up the misunderstanding. In reality, I've never even had a crush on anyone. It's not surprising, considering my looks. I know that even if I did like someone, there's no way they'd ever feel the same about me. As I came to accept that, I stopped thinking about romance and have lived my life without it. Of course, I don't have any romantic feelings for Emily, the most beautiful woman in the office, either. Emily works in the same sales department as me. She's not only beautiful but also incredibly capable, the perfect example of brains and beauty. On top of that, she's the daughter of the company's president and has a wonderful personality, so from the moment she joined the department, people naturally gravitated toward her, and she quickly became popular. I've seen plenty of male employees from various departments, as well as clients, approach her. Since most of my work keeps me within the department, I've witnessed these interactions countless times. I've seen it happen so often that even I, who have nothing to do with it, find it annoying. Judging by how often she politely turns them down, I imagine she probably feels the same. If that's true, then I really admire how she continues to interact with everyone as usual, without showing any frustration. Despite being the president's daughter, she works at the company as a regular employee, which apparently is at the request of President Thompson. Having been raised in a sheltered environment, she's said to be a bit naive about the world. And her father wants her to learn how society works from the ground up. Though it wasn't explicitly stated, I overheard her say this, so I'm sure it's true. Emily has it all: the title of the president's daughter, beauty, high communication skills, and a strong passion for her work. Her enthusiasm seems to inspire those around her, with people going the extra mile in their own jobs and offering her support. For anyone in sales, she has a perfect set of qualities. It feels like her father's decision to assign her to this department wasn't just for her personal growth, but also part of a strategic move as the company's CEO. She's the complete opposite of me. Watching someone like her, who's perfectly suited for sales, only makes me feel more pitiful and jealous of her. Even though I had finally accepted and grown fond of my role as a sales assistant, the intense dislike I felt for my own jealousy kept me from ever initiating a conversation with her. Yet, every day, without fail, Emily would flash her innocent smile and greet me. "Daniel, great work today." Even though there's nothing for us to talk about, she still takes the time to greet me, treating everyone equally. That's probably one of the reasons she's so popular. Thinking this, I'd respond with my usual greeting as well. "Thanks for your hard work, Emily. Daniel, would you like to have lunch with me today?" Emily shyly invited me to lunch in a small voice. It's not every day, but she asks me out for lunch pretty regularly. Sorry. I've still got some work to finish up, so I won't have much time to relax. You always say that. Why do you keep turning me down with the same excuse every time? At least come up with some new lines if you're going to reject me. Better yet, don't reject me at all. I'm trying my best to invite you. By now, I would have thought she'd take the hint after turning her down so many times. Okay, got it. Wait. Does that mean you're finally? I'll make sure to have more excuses ready for next time. That's not what I meant. Leaving her behind, I walked off to grab lunch. Getting invited to lunch by the beautiful and popular president's daughter? It doesn't exactly feel bad. Most guys would probably think, does she have a thing for me? But I know that's not the case. At work, my relationship with her is purely professional. I'm sure she just wants to be friendly or feels like we haven't talked much, that's all there is to it. Even so, there are probably plenty of people who'd be happy to get lunch with her. If you get close enough, maybe there's a chance for something more. But I don't want that kind of relationship with any woman, Emily included. Even if it did happen, in the end, someone like her would end up with someone better looking than me. Maybe I feel this way because I'm scared of getting my hopes up and then being left behind. I've probably become cynical, always finding reasons to avoid romance. As I headed to lunch, I overheard some voices coming from the break room. It seemed like a few guys were smoking and chatting before lunch, having turned on the ventilation fan. There's a designated smoking area, but it's far from our department. So some of the sales guys sneak into the break room when no one's around for a quick smoke. She asked him to lunch again, huh? Emily. Yeah, and she's asking Daniel, right? Yep. Honestly, what'd she see in a guy with a scar like that? He looks like someone from the underworld. Yeah, I don't get it either. If I were him, I'd go with her every day. Same here. Why does he keep turning her down? Sure, Emily keeps asking, but Daniel's just as strange for rejecting her. Maybe he's shy or something? He can't be trying to play it cool, can he? Who knows? But Emily's kind to everyone, and maybe she's just talking to him about work. It makes sense, right? Emily's in high demand for sales. And Daniel's never done sales at all. Oof, that's harsh. What? There's no nicer way to put it. Well, yeah. She's good at her job and has a great personality, and she's the president's daughter, so it's no surprise she talks to him. I didn't really need to eavesdrop. I had listened out of curiosity, but it ended up feeling like a waste of time. Frustrated, I left with a sour mood. After lunch, I returned to the office and saw a crowd gathered around the bulletin board. With only 5 minutes left of lunch break, I wondered why everyone seemed so leisurely. Curious, I pushed through the crowd. On the bulletin board was a notice I hadn't seen before. It read "Company Trip." I overheard snippets of conversation from the group. "Oh, it's that time of year again, huh? I completely forgot about it. We haven't had any company events for the past few years because of the pandemic. The company trips here are always fun and well organized. Emily, we're going on a company trip." Someone called out to Emily by name, and all eyes turned to her. She was, as usual, chatting and laughing with a group of guys. The men around her seemed excited about the company trip announcement. Their glances occasionally darted over to Emily, clearly checking her out. Knowing her personality, I figured she'd probably throw herself into enjoying an event like this. However, her expression didn't seem as excited as I expected. In fact, she looked a bit confused. But that uncertainty only lasted for a moment, as she quickly joined in the excitement with the guys around her. Yay! A hot springs trip. Emily, are you going this year? Come to think of it, you haven't joined us in previous years, right? Yeah, I usually have a family gathering around this time, she replied. Of course, the president's daughter would have important plans. It has nothing to do with being the president's daughter, she laughed, causing the group to chuckle along. In the midst of their laughter, she seemed to notice my gaze, and our eyes met. Feeling awkward, I quickly looked away, pretending to study the details of the company trip notice while nervously sweating. But maybe I'll join this year, Emily said louder than before, as if announcing it to someone. The lunch break soon ended, and everyone returned to their afternoon tasks. I also sat back at my desk, getting into my usual afternoon routine. Still, I couldn't shake the curiosity about that brief moment of hesitation on her face. But realizing I was thinking too much about her every move, I snapped out of it and refocused on my work for the rest of the day. Time passed without much change, and soon enough, the day of the company trip arrived. To be honest, I wasn't really looking forward to it. Company trips felt like a hassle, and if I wasn't obligated to go, I wouldn't even bother. I've never liked being in large crowds. When I was a kid, I used to get dizzy from being around too many people. It's gotten a little better since I became an adult, but big gatherings still make me uncomfortable. Even so, I attend these events because they're part of the job, a way to maintain company relationships. With a face like mine, I have to work harder to fit in and build good relationships with my coworkers. Of course, that's not the ideal reason to go, but without that effort, I wouldn't be able to show others my usual self. While it felt like an obligation, I still found it enjoyable to see my coworkers in a different light during the trips. I wondered if I'd be able to enjoy this year's trip the same way as before. With that thought in mind, I decided to make the most of the company trip. The bus carrying us headed straight to the hotel. This year's accommodation was a luxurious hotel with a large banquet hall, and everyone was dazzled by its grandeur. Well, it's all because the president's daughter is coming along, someone joked, and everyone started praising Emily. She smiled shyly and politely denied it, clearly a bit embarrassed. After dropping off our luggage at the hotel, we were given free time until the evening banquet. Some people went sightseeing or shopping, while others decided to enjoy the famous hot springs in the area, including foot baths. As for me, I had no particular plans, so I wandered around the hotel's surroundings. Surprisingly, the area around the hotel had a bustling shopping street, so I could pass the time walking around without getting bored. Along the way, I bumped into a few coworkers and had casual conversations, which made the afternoon more enjoyable. Night eventually fell, and we all headed to the banquet hall to start the evening festivities. As usual, the employees drank, laughed, and partied wildly. Emily, who hadn't participated in previous years, was seated a bit far from me, but she seemed to be enjoying herself, lightly tipsy and laughing at the employees' performances. The banquet, which had started in the evening, quickly flew by, and before I knew it, it was past 10 p.m. Despite the late hour, everyone was still in high spirits, laughing and cheering at the various performances. Since I'm not a heavy drinker, I had been taking it slow, but even I could feel the alcohol starting to hit me. Next to me, my supervisor, who also wasn't a strong drinker, and I were chatting away as we quietly ate and drank together. Realizing I'd had enough, I decided it was time to head back to my room. Well, I think I'm going to head back to my room now. Excuse me, I told my supervisor. He nodded, saying he might do the same, and together, we left the banquet hall. Since my supervisor's room was on a different floor, we parted ways at the elevator and returned to our respective rooms. Feeling pleasantly tipsy, I reached for the key to unlock my door. But before I could, someone else had already placed their hand on the doorknob. What? The shock sobered me up instantly. I turned around to see none other than a drunken Emily standing there. Hey! It's so mean of you to leave me behind. Without asking, she opened the door to my room and walked right in. She immediately plopped down on my bed and made herself comfortable. With my usual spot taken, I wasn't sure what to do, so I sat down on the small sofa nearby, unsure of how to handle the situation. Lying on the bed, Emily turned to face me, her cheeks flushed, gazing at me through bleary, intoxicated eyes. She looked a bit sleepy, making it hard to read what was going through her mind. Emily, I think you're confused. This is my room, not yours. I don't know what you're talking about. This bed is my spot. You can have that side. Great, she's a stubborn drunk. Seeing Emily like this, so different from her usual self, left me completely baffled. It seems that when Emily gets drunk, she turns into a bit of a giggler. She's been laughing nonstop for a while now, though I have no idea what she finds so funny. Why do you always turn me down when I invite you to lunch, Daniel? After laughing for a while, she started grumbling, clearly frustrated, as if I weren't sitting right in front of her. I didn't know how to respond, feeling like she was just dragging me along for the ride. Should I tell her the truth or not? Not that it would matter, since she probably wouldn't remember anything in this state anyway. As I mulled over what to say, Emily suddenly jumped up from the bed and began trying to undress. You know what? This room is too hot. I'm getting sweaty. I'm going to take a bath. Wait, Emily. This is my room, remember? Panicked by her sudden, outrageous actions, I grew even more flustered. Realizing I couldn't stop her on my own, I quickly decided to prevent her from undressing in front of me and guided her toward the bathroom. You can't undress here. I'll take you to the bathroom, so you can change in there. Okay. She staggered, nearly bumping into everything along the way, but I managed to get her safely to the bathroom. Once I closed the door behind her, I heard the sound of clothes being tossed aside and water filling the tub. Well, at least it seems like she's okay, I thought, returning to the sofa and deciding to wait until she was done. By the time 30 minutes had passed, I was completely sober, and I found myself reflecting on how ridiculous the situation had become. From the bathroom, I could still hear her humming away in the tub, seemingly enjoying herself. Another 30 minutes later, the noise from the bath suddenly stopped. Noticing the silence, I began to worry and knocked on the bathroom door. Emily? Are you okay? No response. I knocked again, but there was still nothing. After a few moments, I heard a faint sound of something hitting the water's surface, then silence again. Feeling more concerned, I couldn't bring myself to walk away from the door. Could she have fallen asleep in the bath from all the alcohol? The thought crossed my mind. If that's the case, it could be dangerous. This is basically a rescue situation, I told myself. With that justification, I burst through the door and rushed into the bathroom. Emily! Are you okay? What I saw shocked me. Emily was lying in the tub with her head resting against the water, her face dangerously close to sinking beneath the surface. She was sound asleep, completely unaware of her surroundings, not even noticing me entering the bathroom. As her nose dipped into the water, I quickly reached out and lifted her head above the surface, gently resting it on the edge of the tub so she could breathe properly. Thankfully, I had caught her just in time, and she resumed her normal breathing right away. Relieved that Emily was safe, I took a deep breath and looked around the bathroom, wondering what to do next. First, I needed to wake her up. I turned back toward her, about to call her name, when my eyes were drawn to something. It wasn't just her beautiful body that caught my attention. Though, to be honest, her beauty was hard to ignore. As I stood frozen, she let out a small groan. Emily! Wake up! Emily! I called her name a little louder than usual, and she slowly opened her eyes, looking over at me. For a moment, she seemed confused, as if she didn't recognize who I was, but soon enough, her awareness returned. "Ha? What are you doing here, Daniel?" Her tone was clearer than before, indicating that she was sobering up. As her surroundings began to sink in, she started to piece the situation together. "Why are you in the bathroom? Were you trying to peek at me? That's disgusting. I can't believe you." She shrieked loudly, enough that I worried the people in the neighboring rooms might hear, and I quickly panicked in response. Still, I tried to stay as calm and concise as possible. This is my room. You came in here drunk and went straight to the bath. What?" And then it got really quiet, so I got worried. "I'm sorry, but I had to check on you. Sure enough, I found you with your face almost in the water. So I helped you out." Her eyes widened as she processed my explanation. Looking around the bathroom, something clicked for her, and she suddenly tensed up. She was starting to remember the events leading up to this. Her face turned bright red. "Oh, I'm sorry." Having rescued her and now feeling a sense of relief, I waited for her to finish up in the bathroom while I sat back on the sofa. A short while later, Emily emerged from the bathroom, and she apologized again. "I'm really sorry. I caused you so much trouble." "It's fine, don't worry about it." "No, seriously, did I say anything weird?" She didn't seem to remember exactly what she had said earlier. But I didn't think she had said anything particularly strange. "You were fine, just like your usual self." My reassurance didn't seem to ease her embarrassment, as she apologized once more, bowing deeply. "I'm so sorry. I must have made such a fool of myself." Though I had gotten quite an eyeful earlier, I couldn't blame her for feeling embarrassed. After all, I had seen something very personal. I thought back to the detail I had noticed but decided against mentioning it to her. "Really, it's okay. Don't worry about it. More importantly, are you feeling up to heading back to your room?" She seemed like she wanted to say something, but I brushed it off, urging her to return to her room. "Yes." And so, the night ended awkwardly, but without further incident. The next day, Everyone continued to enjoy the final day of the company trip as if nothing had happened. As usual, I wandered around on my own, taking in the sights. By late morning, I felt it was time to grab some lunch. So I pulled out my phone to search for nearby places to eat. Just then, my phone rang. It was Emily. I hesitated for a moment but felt a bit guilty after everything that had happened, so I answered. She was calling to invite me to lunch. Normally, I would have turned her down, but considering she wanted to apologize for the previous night, I agreed. We met up and had lunch together. During the meal, neither of us brought up what had happened the night before. Instead, we just talked about the company trip and our usual work-related topics. Surprisingly, the conversation flowed smoothly, and I found myself enjoying it more than expected. After lunch, since it was still early, we decided to head back to the hotel for a bit. As I suggested we head back, she suddenly tugged on my sleeve, stopping me in my tracks. Would you mind coming to my room for a moment? Emily's face was flushed, and she looked at me with an expression of uncertainty. Her troubled look was so cute, like a puppy about to cry, that I couldn't help but feel my heart skip a beat. But as I looked closer, I noticed her hands were trembling. Sensing something was off, I decided to follow her to her room without questioning her further. Feeling a bit anxious, I entered her room, and Emily gestured for me to sit on the sofa. Oddly enough, instead of sitting across from me, she sat right next to me, closing the distance between us. I was surprised and could feel my heart racing, but she remained silent. Not knowing what to do, a tense silence hung in the air. So, what did you think of my body? Her first words broke the silence, but they weren't what I expected at all. Her face was tense, and she was visibly shaking. I wasn't sure how to respond. She was clearly referring to the scar I had seen earlier. You're beautiful. I'm sorry, no matter the situation, it wasn't right for me to see you like that, especially since we're not even dating. Suddenly, her expression shifted to anger, and she glared at me. Stop lying. Beautiful? Are you just pitying me? What I had seen was the large scar on her chest. But I understood why she was angry. I, too, have a large scar on my face, and I knew, to some extent, how she felt. But I meant it. I really think you're beautiful. It's not pity. If anything, I understand your feelings better than most. Right? At my words, tears welled up in her eyes, and she began to share her story. Emily explained that she had suffered from a heart condition as a child, which prevented her from engaging in normal physical activities. Her father, the company president, made the decision to have her undergo major surgery to treat her heart. The scar on her chest was a result of that surgery and had remained ever since. The surgery was a success, and her body gradually recovered to the point where she could live like a normal person. As she grew older, she was able to lead a normal life just like everyone else. As she got older, she was able to enjoy a regular life, despite her status as the president's daughter. Being as beautiful as she was, it was no surprise that she had boyfriends over the years. One particular boyfriend had been kind and understanding about her past health issues, and Emily believed that he would accept her scar as well. But when they grew close and he saw the scar, his reaction shattered her hopes. Oh, sorry, I can't. Seeing that just turns me off. He looked at her with disgust, as if he were staring at a monster. Of course, they broke up, and like me, she gave up on love. That experience led her to believe that no one would ever accept the scar on her chest. Still, she tried dating a few more times during her school years, but every boyfriend reacted the same way upon seeing her scar. and the relationships ended. It's so selfish of them. But I think I'm just as foolish for letting myself get involved, knowing it would end the same way. Even female friends didn't accept her scar. During a trip to the beach with a close group of girls, she showed them the scar in advance, hoping for understanding. But the response was far colder than she anticipated. Wait, seriously? You won't get hit on by any guys with that. Emily, could you wear a swimsuit that hides it? That way, it's no big deal. The hurtful comments caused her to drift apart from them. And eventually, they stopped interacting altogether. But I'm still the president's daughter, so I've got money, and there are people who like me because of that. Her voice sounded resigned, as if she had long given up. But at some point, I became too afraid to leave the house. I ended up dropping out of school. I couldn't trust anyone and was completely alone. Then one day, my father told me about someone who, despite having a visible scar, was working hard and getting along with others. He said I should go meet this person and learn from him as part of my life education. I didn't expect anything to change, but then I met you, Daniel. Despite your scar, which is impossible to hide, you were still able to connect with people and work. Seeing that made me feel like I had to try harder too. As I listened to her story, I was struck by the truth behind her words. And I felt embarrassed for all the assumptions I had made about President Thompson's motives. President Thompson hadn't placed her in the sales department to use her as a tool, but to encourage his daughter, who had been through so much. He assigned her to my department because he believed seeing me work hard despite my scar would inspire her. When I looked at Emily, I found her gazing back at me. Daniel, you've been saving me all along. Watching you work hard, even with your scar, gave me the strength to keep smiling and moving forward instead of shutting myself off. As she spoke, she gave me one of her usual bright and beautiful smiles. Seeing that smile, it felt like the fog that had clouded my heart for so long was finally lifting. This scar, which I had always resented, had unknowingly helped her. I see. I slowly and gently ran my fingers over the scar that stretched from my temple to my eyebrow. For the first time in my life, I felt grateful for having this scar. I didn't know you thought of me that way. Well, I never had the chance to tell you before. Every time I tried by inviting you to lunch, you turned me down. So, that's why you kept asking me to lunch? Yeah, well, there are other reasons, but can I ask how you got that scar, Daniel? Oh, it's nothing dramatic. Just a car accident when I was a kid. Everything's been settled with the other party, and it's all in the past now. But the scar never faded. I went through a lot because of it and really hated it. But after what you said today, I don't think it's so bad anymore. I rubbed my scar and gave a wry smile. I can imagine how hard it must have been for you, having a scar in such a visible place. Probably even harder than it was for me. But I'm grateful you came to work at my father's company, and that I got to meet you. Thank you, Daniel. Hearing her say that so earnestly made me feel a bit embarrassed. It had been a long time since anyone had thanked me so openly. And one more thing. Her face reddened even more as she struggled to get the words out. You said my body was beautiful, even if it was just to be polite. So, wouldn't it be okay if we had lunch together from now on? You always say no. Her face flushed bright red after she said that. Her reaction, and the way her eyes glistened as she glanced at me, made me realize something. She had feelings for me. Her gaze was filled with emotion, her eyes shimmering softly. It wasn't just to be polite. I really do think you're beautiful. and I'm sorry I kept turning you down. The truth is, I've always kept my distance from women because I thought no one would want to be with me because of my scar. I admitted that, like her, I had carried the same fear. That my scar would eventually drive anyone away. She looked surprised for a moment but then smiled warmly, clearly touched by my confession. Then, if we were together, wouldn't that solve everything? What? Her face turned even redder, and tears welled up in her eyes as she made her bold suggestion. I was shocked, but I could tell she had gathered a lot of courage to say it. You know what? You're right. Let's do it, let's date. As soon as I agreed, she threw herself into my chest with a burst of excitement. I'm so happy. Thank you. I'm really looking forward to this. Overcome with joy, she pressed herself against me and hugged me tightly. I had to mentally brace myself to maintain my composure, but I hugged her back, trying to stay calm. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too, Emily. She responded by hugging me even tighter. The next day, we shared the news with our co-workers. Emily and I were officially a couple. Reactions ranged from surprise at the unexpected pairing to comments like, "You two actually look good together." A few of the male employees seemed frustrated that I had stolen Emily from them, but they still congratulated us in the end. Naturally, the news reached President Thompson as well. That same day, I was called into the president's office, where he asked me to take care of his daughter. President Thompson looked me straight in the eye, and I could tell he was completely serious. I straightened my posture in response. When I told him that I genuinely loved her, he smiled warmly. Sorry I couldn't assign you to a sales role. It seemed he felt guilty about not giving me more opportunities in that regard. Please don't worry about it. Honestly, at first, I wondered why I wasn't being sent out on sales calls, but now, I really enjoy my work as an assistant. Just being able to work under you, Mr. Thompson, is something I'm grateful for. And on top of that, you gave me the chance to meet Emily. I couldn't be happier in life. I see. Thank you for saying that. No, thank you. I promise I'll make her happy. Since we started dating, Emily and I had learned to accept the insecurities we once struggled with. That shift in perspective allowed us to grow not just as individuals, but also to expand our social circle. By the time we had our wedding, we were surrounded by so many people offering their blessings. After the wedding, matching rings adorned our left ring fingers. Sitting side by side on a long sofa, I found myself reminiscing about the early days of our relationship. It all happened so fast, didn't it? Yeah, it really did, I agreed. Emily reached out and gently touched the scar on my face. Our scars may never fade, but neither will my love for you. That's a promise. She smiled brightly, radiating happiness. Her joy was infectious, and I couldn't help but smile too. I wrapped my arm around her waist, pulling her gently but firmly toward me. Then, through her clothes, I traced the spot where her scar lay on her chest. I feel the same way. I'll always love you. Even now, those words are etched in my heart, and together, we continue to walk this happy journey of life.